Hello there, gamers, and welcome to Random News of Gaming for July of 2023, the monthly gaming news series destined to be late and gay for eternity. June is always a dumpster fire of a month when it comes to gaming news because it was E3 month, but now it's nondescript digital showcase month. We got a lot to go over today, so get comfy and enjoy being a little late and gay with me. The first major show of not-E3 was the Guerrilla Collective, and it was not that great, to be honest. The only game that interested me was a little adventure game called Europa. The next show was the one that was supposed to bring the big guns, and that was the Summer Game Fest hosted by Jeff Keighley. And it honestly really sucked. A lot of it felt like a rehash of the Sony presentation that was last month, and that one sucked. This one just showed off a lot of the things we already saw in the Sony one, and the only notable games that were first revealed at this event could have been revealed at other events instead. The first one we saw was Prince of Persia, which seems to be inspired by the original Prince of Persia, the old 2D ones, and people seem pretty split on that, especially since people have been waiting for a while for a new one to come out. They also showed off Sonic Superstars, which honestly looks like it could be good, but you never know with modern Sonic Team. And then they rounded out the show with something that we already knew was coming, and that was part 2 of the Final Fantasy VII remake. So this show was all around a disappointment, to be honest. The same day Devolver Digital had their event, and it was honestly really stupid. There wasn't anything that interested me there except the Talos Principle 2, which was already shown off last month. The next big show was one called the Wholesome Games Direct, and if you remember that one Nintendo Direct a while back where everyone made fun of it for having too many farming games, well, this was basically that on steroids. But the one thing this show really did right is that they showed off a lot of games. So many games that even if you're not into this kind of stuff, there's probably something there that might interest you. The next one was the Xbox Games Showcase, and in my opinion, this was the best showcase of the month. They started off the showcase with a new trailer for Fable, and this trailer seems to be very controversial for various reasons, and I have a lot to say about this trailer myself, but we'll get into that later. The other new game that was really shown off for the first time was Avowed, something that people have been waiting for quite a long time, and it looks pretty good. We've only seen snippets of gameplay from that one, but I've heard that a lot of people are really excited for this one due to who's making it. There was also the new Ubisoft Star Wars game, which I don't care about because I don't care about Star Wars anymore. But the last thing they showed off was Starfield, and I have a lot to say about that too. It's actually one of my most anticipated games, but it's Bethesda, so I'm very hesitant. I'll get into that a little bit later. Next was the PC Gaming Show. This one was way too long and full of unfunny cringe skits and stuff like that. They need to stop doing this. But at least they showed off a lot of games during it. Next was Ubisoft and pass, no one cares. Capcom Showcase, they showed off some more Dragon's Dogma 2. I really hope that game turns out good. And they also did a silly delay trailer for Pragmata, which was somewhat amusing. Then there was the Nintendo Direct on the 21st, and I did a stream reaction to that one. There's not a whole lot there that I'm super excited for. I'll probably play Pikmin 4 and Super Mario Bros. Wonder at some point, but I'm not super excited for them. Super Mario RPG, I could never get into the original. The one game that stuck out to me the most was a game called Penny's Big Breakaway, made by the people that made Sonic Mania, and that game looks like a lot of fun, so we'll see. Sonic Central, it was just a bunch of Sonic merch, so who gives a shit? And then there was a last-minute Bandai Namco conference at Anime Expo, and the only new thing they showed off was a Jujutsu Kaisen game that looks really bad. So yeah, that wraps up all the conferences I care to talk about. There's a few more you can look up if you want to, but they didn't show anything noteworthy in my opinion. But yeah, I want to circle back on some of the things that was shown during the Xbox showcase. First, I'll get this one out of the way quickly. Avowed needs to show off a little bit more for me to be convinced. What we saw in the trailer was just a supercut of really short segments that don't really give us a lot of information other than what the game looks like visually. Now, the one I really want to talk about though is Fable. Fable looks really fucking bad to me. But I'm gonna keep an open mind and wait until we see more, because that one also showed off hardly anything. The first thing we see in here is this guy narrating the trailer, and I didn't know that this was an actual real person the first time I saw it, but it turns out this guy is a famous celebrity, and that's already red flag number 1 for me. As a general rule, I don't want celebrities in video games. Whenever I see this, I can't help but think that the company making the game is compensating for something. Like the game's not going to live up to people's expectations when it comes out, but then they use these celebrities to try to market the game to as many people as possible. Another problem is that I think this guy's narration was supposed to be funny, but it really wasn't, not even in the slightest. The only thing I can really give it is that it had a bunch of random Fable references in it, but that's about it. But if this is the kind of humor we're going to be expecting for this game, then I expect it to be dull and unfunny. And not very Fable, if you ask me. The second main thing that a lot of people noticed, and also ended up being a really stupid drama on the internet, was the way the main character looked in this trailer. There were a lot of people complaining about how ugly she looked, and, well, let's just be honest here. Damn girl, you ugly.
UGLY, she ain't got no alibi, she ugly.
But here's the thing. Ugly characters and Fable are not strangers to each other. Ever since the first game, tons of characters in this series looked weird and ugly as hell, so it's kind of to be expected. The problem is that Fable is a series where you can take your character, make them look however you want, and customize them to no end. And for a series where you can do that, this was the character they decided to use as the poster child for the game. Why? Which leads into another problem I have with this trailer. Part of the fun of Fable was being able to customize your character however you want, do whatever you want, and even be evil if you want. Does this trailer show any of that? No. I'd go as far as to say that's one of the most important aspects of the Fable series, and there was none of that in the trailer at all. It's going to be a real problem if they bring back the attractiveness stat, which has been a thing in Fable for a long time, and my character still looks like an ugly potato, while the game's telling me that they're attractive. It's just weird to see that in a game series where you normally have a customizable character, this is the one they chose to represent the series in its first reveal. And lastly, we only got to see a few snippets of gameplay, and for what it looks like, there's really not a lot to go on, but these looked like scripted segments that reminded me of a fucking Uncharted game, and I'm not looking forward to seeing more of that. Come on, Microsoft, let Sony do their shitty wannabe movie games and shit like that. You've got better things to do. For example, on the other hand, we have Starfield. Based on what they've shown, this game looks fucking amazing. However, this is Bethesda. This is Todd Howard. What they did in this gameplay showcase was absolutely brilliant, because they showed this game in the absolute best light they possibly could. But one thing you gotta remember when watching trailers and stuff like this, what are they not telling you? There's so many things in this potentially bloated game that could go horribly wrong at launch, and like all games from this studio, you gotta expect the launch to be absolute shit. And of course, a few days after this showcase, a lot of people's fears were confirmed. Starfield will only be 30 FPS on the Xbox Series X. You know, the most powerful console on the market right now? 30 FPS, with no 60 FPS option. What the fuck are you doing?
I expect nothing, and I'm still let down.
To me, that's just a sign that this is going to be an unoptimized, buggy mess when it comes out. And honestly, I can't wait, because there's going to be some hilarious shit going down. Oh, also you can't get a disc for the game. Yep, there's no disc even on the console version. What the fuck? Whoa, post-edit chow here. Apparently this isn't true and was actually just a mistake put out by the Bethesda support Twitter. And I didn't find out until just now as I was editing this video. So, standard physical editions for the Xbox will have a disc. But you done fucked it up. Honestly, if you buy this game on the Xbox, what the fuck are you doing? Well, there's enough Xbox and console fanboys out there that'll do it anyway, I guess. But goddamn, at least on PC, this game looks like it could be absolutely amazing, and I hope it is, but I'll give it about a 1% chance of being actually really good on launch. Next up, we have another futile boycott attempt at Call of Duty of all things. To be honest, I kinda don't want to talk about this one because I don't like to get super political on my channel, but it was like one of the biggest news stories last month that didn't have anything to do with the non-E3 showcases. Basically what happened was there was a Pride Month thing last month because it was June, so of course there was, and a Call of Duty streamer named Nick Merck said they should leave little kids alone. That was it. That was the tweet. And they decided to ban him and remove all of his merch from their store just because of that. And so a lot of people decided to boycott Call of Duty, and well, you know how game boycotts go these days. They don't happen, even when people say they do happen. People are still buying Call of Duty after all the shit that Activision has pulled over the years, so they're not gonna stop buying Call of Duty over this. It's just the way it is, but seriously, banning him over a take like that is pretty dumb. That's like the coldest, most normal take in the world. Look, all I'm saying is that maybe the offices of Activision should get a little, you know. FBI, open up! Aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot of big news last month, so I have a bunch of smaller stories here. Street Fighter VI launched and it was really successful, and to a degree that fighting games usually aren't, because they tend to be a small niche rather than a massively popular series. But I think this goes to show that when you try something new, sometimes it works out, because Street Fighter VI did a lot of new stuff compared to previous games in the series. Another successful launch we had last month was Diablo IV, and people are never going to learn to stop giving Blizzard money, are they? Oh well. But at least for Blizzard, Diablo IV appears to be a pretty good game despite a lot of complaints that I've heard about it, most of which having to do with the always online connection for a fucking single player mode. Well, you bought it, you get what you deserve, just saying. Another launch last month was Final Fantasy XVI, and apparently Square Enix is worried about low sales numbers. And to Square Enix, I have to say, what the fuck did you expect putting it on the PS5 only? The PS5 is selling like shit in Japan for one, and overseas, it's still a JRPG series. It's not going to be the most popular thing in the world. People aren't going to go out and buy PS5s just for this game. Some will, but not a lot. Next we have EA adding NFTs to Madden, because of course they fucking are. Anyway, moving on. Twitch is imploding. They keep shooting themselves in the foot with new policy updates and stuff like that. A lot of streamers are migrating to Kick, including XQC and Amaranth, I believe, with contracts in the multi-million-dollar range. It's kind of crazy. Honestly, I hate Twitch, so the sooner it implodes completely, the better. Next, I have a story about Capcom and Koei Tecmo jumping on the ESG train, but it's kind of a non-story. You can read about that yourself. It's all a bunch of corpo nonsense that probably won't make a huge difference in the long run, and probably won't see much difference in our games. Some people have claimed that Street Fighter VI is a victim of it, but who knows. Skullgirls developers are censoring their game that's been out for like 10 years now. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? If you want a good breakdown of this situation, I recommend watching Sid Alpha's video on it. I'll link that in the description. But this is one of the major reasons why I don't like digital games. But that's a whole other topic for another time. Lastly, we have a really funny story actually. So the Korean ratings board was hammering Blue Archive with an 18+ rating, even though it's not worthy of an 18+ rating. And so a lot of the Korean Blue Archive fans signed a petition to have them knock it off. And what it led to was a massive investigation into the Korean ratings board. Turns out they were embezzling money and using it for crypto shit. So yeah, the cute and funny mobile game punished the bratty government. Make of that what you will. Damn, that joke sucked. I should really script these fucking videos, just saying. Anyway, let's go over some releases. I have a lot this time because there's a few that I missed and there's just a lot coming out in July, I guess. On May 25th, there was a game called Evil Wizard, a 2D hack and slash RPG where you play as an evil wizard and try to reclaim your tower from the heroes that took it over. A fun little twist, I gotta admit. On May 30th, we had the System Shock remake, and apparently it's pretty good. I totally forgot that this game was coming out, so here it is. On June 8th, we had Army of Ruin, a game in a similar vein to Vampire Survivors, but this one has some pretty 3D graphics and looks like it might have a bit more depth to it. Maybe. And then starting off our July releases, we have GYLT on July 6th. Actually, this game is pretty old, but you might not have heard of it because it released as a Google Stadia exclusive. Now it's finally free from the prison that it once belonged to. This game is a puzzle-based horror game in a similar vein to Little Nightmares, it looks like. On July 7th, we have Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie, the final chapter in the more recent Trails games. Don't play this game if you haven't played any of the others that came before it. Trust me. Oh, and Nisa fucked it up, because of course they did. Fortunately, I already played it with the English patch. On July 12th, we have the Atelier Marie remake. This is the first Atelier game that came out back in the 90s. And since then, there's been like 25 or so games, something like that. But this is the first one that ever came out, that I don't think a lot of people in English-speaking nations have played. Also on July 12th, we have Oxenfree 2, a follow-up to the cult classic indie title from 2016? Yep, 2016. And this one's being published by Netflix of all things. That's kind of weird. So I guess that means this one isn't an indie game. We'll see if this one reaches the cult status that the first one did, though. On July 13th, we have Gravity Circuit. This game is literally just a Mega Man clone. So if you wanted a new 2D Mega Man, here you go. On July 13th, we also have a game called Testament: The Order of High Human, which seems to be a mix of first-person action fantasy and first-person puzzle game like the Talos Principle. And that's a really cool combination for me, so I hope this game turns out good. The voice acting's kinda bad though. On July 14th, we have Jagged Alliance 3, which is a game that was apparently in development hell for a really long time, and the last game came out like 20 years ago. So it's cool to see it being revived. Hopefully it turns out as good as the original classics. On July 19th, we have Cross Tales, a strategy JRPG made by Kemco that looks like a step up from a lot of their previous works, which mostly look like RPG Maker games. On July 20th, we have Might and Magic Clash of Heroes, another strategy RPG using the Might and Magic IP. This is actually a remake of the DS game that came out in 2009, so if you never got to play it then, here you go. Next, we have a game called Remnant II, and this looks like a really interesting mix of Souls-like, shooter, and co-op multiplayer. Apparently the first Remnant is kind of a cult hit, but I had never heard of it until now. The only thing I'd be wary of is it's being published by Gearbox, so keep that in mind. But if that kind of game looks too hard for you, you can go full baby mode and get Koa and the Five Pirates of Mara on July 27th. Basically just looks like a really simple 3D platformer. The footage in the trailer reminded me a bit of the SpongeBob games, so if you like those, maybe keep an eye on this one. That wraps up this episode of RNG. Hope you enjoyed my low-tier takes. Don't forget to check out some of the other things I've done recently if you haven't yet, such as my top 40 favorite soundtrack series and my top 10 favorite and least favorite JRPG protagonists. As a follow-up to that, my next countdown will be the top 10 favorite and least favorite JRPG antagonists, so keep an eye out for it. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my nonsense. Join my little Discord community if you want to have some fun, and follow me on the Twitter, futile as that may be these days, and I barely use it anyway. And as always, have high standards, low expectations.